This is E.C. Sykes, Republican nominee for Secretary of State. He is challenging the incumbent Democrat Elaine Marshall. Mr. Sykes, thanks for coming by for a conversation.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for having me. We're glad to be here.
Well, a lot of races you could choose to run. You're choosing to challenge Miss Marshall and Secretary of State. Why is the Secretary of State role right for you now?
You know, Kelly, I have a really strong background. I've been fortunate to get the opportunity to run a number of different businesses, large and small, private and public. And considering what the Secretary of State does here, which is to work with businesses, it's just the perfect role for me.
Your website, because I did some work on you, looked into you. You say you're a servant leader. I've heard that term in some of the corporate leadership classes. What does that mean to be a servant leader, and what does that mean for you as a leader?
Yeah, Kelly, for me, that terminology actually goes back and captures my faith background, which is an important part of what's called me to run. And so I was fortunate and blessed to be raised by the Christian parents. Actually, you know, I'm a 10th generation North Carolinian. The first 9 generations were raised on the farm. I was born in Durham, and so we were raised there. And that Christian background is particularly important for me. In that, part of that is the teaching of faith and servant, that is, serving other people. My father did that in his roles. My mother did that in her roles, and I look forward to do that for the people of North Carolina.
There's so many non-native North Carolinians now living in this state. Why is it an advantage for you to be a 10th generation North Carolinian when you're securing the votes of so many people who weren't born here?
Yeah. You know, and that's true. We're a very attractive state. We got a lot of great people that are moving to North Carolina. By being here for that long, though, for being generational, it really have a fantastic understanding of the values of North Carolina, the things that have made us great in the past, and the opportunities that I was able to take advantage of for me to prosper and to do well. But you know, in addition to that, the work that I was at, the companies I work for, gave me opportunities to move outside the state. And so while I have a long heritage here in North Carolina, I've also had opportunities to work in other countries as well as other states. And so I have that blended view as a result of that.
What have you learned from your career in business, and how do you think it would shape you for public service?
You know, in the roles that I've had, which have been 3 CEO functions, and I've been on the executive team of a $28 billion Fortune 500, which our General Assembly budget is $24 billion, and so they compare well. You learn how to manage complex operations. You learn how to bring customer service into office at this point. You can take those work experiences and apply them here, and particularly in a role that's important to serve the people. And then finally, as a public CEO, transparency is hugely important. And we need that same level of transparency in our government. And so there's consequences for a public officer if they're not transparent, and we think those same consequences should apply to a public role.
Why does the Secretary of State need a self-proclaimed outsider to come in at this point and take over that office?
Yeah, you know, and you're right. I am a political outsider. I'm not a person that's spent a lot of time going through all the political activities in the state. My background is in business. And the Secretary of State's role is to help drive business. Some of it's regulate the current business, but a lot of it's to drive economic growth. There are a lot of things we could do with some fresh ideas, with some business, common sense business practices that we can bring into this office. So I want to take those business skills, the successes I had of growing companies successfully, and bring them to the people of North Carolina so we can create jobs.
How do you do that? What are some innovations that you would bring into office in 2021 as Secretary of State?
Well, you know, some of the roles I've had, for instance, was CEO of an IT company, which gives you a great understanding of IT. And that's a technology that continues to always change. But I tell you why, there's always ideas and things we need to fix that are immediately in front of us. I just want to remind everybody that anybody that gets voted for, it's a term you have to serve. And the people we have in office now never anticipated that they would have the challenges in front of them that they face today with the COVID virus is there. Or we had 9/11 that we recognized at the end of this week, right? The people that were in office never realized that they would have to be facing a nation that was attacked like it was at that time. So what's really important, I think, are 2 things. what are your values, right? How do you make decisions and what do you prioritize? And what skills do you have in order to help North Carolina face those issues that you may not even know what they are right now? And so that business experience that I've been blessed to have gives me the toolbox that I need to be able to help move our state forward through times that we may not even understand what those difficulties look like.
How much do your personal values, do you see that influencing your work in the public sector? Because sometimes folks' beliefs don't parlay well into a secular or a government type operation. So are we going to see your personal values at play as Secretary of State, or are you going to lean on that experience and those business values that you say you've developed over the past 2 decades plus?
So look, my Christian faith I confessed at the age of 7. It is something that is a part of me and has been a part of me all the way through the business world. And so obviously as an officer in companies, public and private, we understand the importance of those values and how to use them in the marketplace. But understand, right? There's a major part of development of our values belongs outside of the government, belongs in the church. But I think the key things for us is we have people that we can trust, people that will do what they say they're going to do, people that have integrity that's there are important. And those values are biblical values that I've demonstrated in the past, and we look forward to demonstrating in this office.
For people who, let's just say they don't perceive their faith as strong as yours, but yet you're an option on their ballot, what do you say to them when they hear a candidate present their faith as part of their platform, and you still need their votes to win? What do you say to them?
Yeah, so you want a person that you can trust. You want a person that you know where they stand and how they will respond during different situations. And so we've been very clear about what we stand for and what you can count on. So for instance, I've been clear on where I stand on defunding the police. We've stood up. We've declared it in public, right? We've been at presentations and said, this is where we stand on this issue. And my opponent will not state her position. And we think people clearly need to know where a person stands. My faith is what I stand on, which includes integrity and transparency and many other things that were the foundation not only of our country, but the foundation of our state.
Secretary of State Marshall's been in office since '96, so it's 24 years, and she's looking for years 25 plus. You're using that against her as an insider, an alleged political insider to your outsider status. Why is that experience a negative in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, everybody, it's all the talk that we have around term limits and all the difficulty and things that are not good about government when a person has an office for too long. And so I think the people have already vetted that out. They already understand the difficulties. In the business world, we would never let somebody stay in that same position for that length of period of time because we know that it creates some difficulties. Not that they couldn't stay at the same company, but we move them around to different capacities to be able to take advantage of their benefits in different roles. In this case, we got the same person in the same role for, she's been in this office 24. She was serving before that period of time. This will put her in office for over 30 years. That's just too long. We need fresh ideas. We need new leadership. We need particularly business leadership in this role.
You set yourself up. I got to ask you, how many years would you say you'd be effective as Secretary of State before, you hit the road and retire?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it'll be less than 30 years before I even considered it. But as I look at this role, not knowing what the future looks like, 2-3 cycles, I think is if I can't get everything done that I can do within that period of time, then something's missing, right?
The Secretary of State's office relies on a pretty huge office. It's a big team over there. It's if you want to call it a bureaucracy, that's what it is. Your success will clearly hinge on inspiring your bureaucracy to follow your lead. How do you do that, and what kind of boss will you be if you're elected?
Yeah. Well, again, we've already demonstrated the servant leadership. And you're right. I've led small companies here in North Carolina. One of the companies that I led was one of the fastest growing companies in North Carolina for 2 years in a row. And then I was on the larger corporate office. I led 35,000 people in 20 countries with that international business experience and understanding people in different cultures, how to motivate them and drive them to the same goal. So we've had that opportunity. We've had the opportunity to turn companies around in the past, and it's that experience that really has put me in a great position to lead this one.
Do you see the Secretary of State's office as being a large, small, or medium-sized business if you're equating it to your experience in the private sector?
Well, I see it as a smaller group of people impacting a large number of companies that are here and employees that are here. And so we've got to be able to, and it has a lot of complexity to it. And it's that complexity and my experience in the business world driving complex operations and processes that are going to be beneficial to the people.
What does the Secretary of State's office need to do? How does it need to change to prepare for business in North Carolina beginning in 2021?
Yeah. I mean, look, we're going through some very difficult economic times right now. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been impacted by the COVID virus that's happening. So the first things we got to do is we got to safely get people back to work. And we need to work through that process. And I can tell you through the business experience that I had, we've got a lot of fresh ideas and proven lessons that we can bring to that process. But in addition to that, there's opportunities for us to be more transparent. There's more opportunities for us to be better customer focus minded than where we've been in the past. And we've got to set a culture that starts at the top of being able to deliver better in those areas for the people.
How do you see coronavirus, the policies needed to keep workers safe, affecting business dealings and business filings, in your case as future Secretary of State potentially?
Well, so you need to understand, look, there's a clear statutory things where you need to execute some of the filings and et cetera, and that's just processing and turn into crank. But this role is bigger than that. And that's one of the issues we have with this role. This role has been underscoped. We can do a lot more for the people of North Carolina by executing in the Secretary of State's role to its full intended value, to unleash the power and the capability that this office would bring. And so that's about being able to advocate for employees and employers for better laws, for those don't exist, to be able to coach our legislature as to what things need to change. Look, we're closest to the business people. We hear their voice the best across the state. Nobody else has that. So we should be in the position to help bring some good solutions to them that need to be executed.
This is E.C. Sykes, Republican nominee, North Carolina Secretary of State on the 2020 ballot. Mr. Sykes, thank you so much for your time and your insight into your campaign.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it.